Mark Cuban made a crazy $1 million bet about whether Bitcoin or Ethereum would beat the S&P 500 in terms of performance for the next 10 years. He was in a heated debate with Peter Mallouk, who I thought was some random guy on Twitter, but turns out Peter's a seasoned fund manager with over $50 billion in assets under management. So whoops, my bad. Anyways, Mark took the side of Bitcoin and Ether, whereas Peter took the side of the S&P 500. Now, you're probably like, of course Mark is going to win, but not so fast. There's a surprising case to be made for each side. So in this video, I'm going to weigh all the arguments and pick my eventual winner. If you're curious to learn more, strap in my friend and let's dive right in. Hey folks, Kevin here, and you might be like, hold up a sec. Didn't Mark used to be a huge Bitcoin hater? Yes, you are absolutely right. Just a few years ago, he said he'd rather have bananas than Bitcoin and said crypto didn't have real utility.
Here's the thing about crypto, particularly Bitcoin. Bitcoin is worth what somebody will pay for it. I'd rather have bananas. I can eat bananas. Crypto, not so much. It's not that I'm against cryptocurrencies, you just have to be very careful. At best, they're a store of value.
But fast forward to today and he's done a complete 180. He now owns quite a bit of Bitcoin, is actively investing in and using DeFi protocols too, and even got his Dallas Mavs to accept Dogecoin. The biggest reason for his change of heart is because back in 2017, he didn't see that many legit use cases. But now the entire space is much more mature and crypto is easier to use than ever before. So it's not surprising at all that he chose the side of Bitcoin and Ether. So why is this even a bet worth having? Is Peter just crazy and wants to throw away his money? Not necessarily, and to understand why we have to go into the stocks world first. According to a New York Times research piece, if we look at the best performing stocks in the past 40 years, we see ones like Home Depot, Gap, Kansas City Southern, and a bunch of other random ones that I've never heard of. But Home Depot did a literal 10,000x from 1982 to 2021. So we gotta ask ourselves, out of the thousands of choices available back then, would we have been able to pick the right ones? Or might you have picked one that was high flying back then but went bankrupt or fizzled out over the years? We're no Warren Buffett after all. Most investors cannot pick the right companies, so that's why financial folks always recommend just to put our money into trusted index funds like the S&P 500. But even if we were professional fund sharks who do this for a living, even they have an extremely hard time just beating the boring old S&P. Take a look at this data, the percentage of large funds that underperformed the S&P over different time spans. For a 1-year period, 64% underperformed. For a 5-year period, 85% underperformed. And for a 10-year period, a whopping 91% underperformed. And these are for professional fund managers who do this for a living. I mean, wow, I'm speechless. I think the data speaks for itself. This is why Peter Mallouk confidently backs the S&P versus individual stocks or cryptos. But Mark retorts that this bet is more about the Fed printing money and playing games with interest rates, and how Bitcoin and Ether can uniquely counter that. Now, this bet I love because it reminds me of some other famous crypto predictions over the years. And there's no shortage of those in the loud and brash world that is crypto. Like John McAfee saying that he'll eat his own eggplant if Bitcoin doesn't hit $1 million by 2020. Or the hyperwave theory people who swore that Bitcoin had a 99% chance of dropping to $1,000 during the 2018 bear market. Or the supercycle people who say that Bitcoin will ride the coattails of institutions to $1 million in 2022 without large corrections ever again. Right or wrong, I love these bets because it keeps crypto spicy and fun. In fact, I made another video about 6 famous predictions that the experts got wrong. So go watch that one after you're done with this video. I'll leave a card up here and a link in the description too. Now, back to the bet. Who's gonna win? Mark or Peter? Bitcoin or the S&P? First, let's make an educated guess for how the S&P will perform over these next 10 years. If we look at history for the last 10 years, the S&P had a whopping 4x gain. But this was also on the back of one of the longest uninterrupted bull markets in history. Thanks, Jerome Powell. And in the 10 years prior, from 2001 to 2011, the overall gain was only 16% because there was a large correction in between. I made this chart for y'all to go even further back, where we had a 3.3x gain, 2.9x gain, and a 30% gain in those prior decade periods. So in the past 5 decades, the smallest gain for that 10-year chunk was 16%, whereas the largest was 4x. Seems unlikely to me to assume that the S&P will go 4x again, just because we're way overdue for a correction. But for the sake of this debate, let's just assume another 4x gain for the S&P in the next decade, just to take the best case scenario, right? But what about Bitcoin though? In the past 10 years, it had a face-melting 12,000x gain. But of course, that's not gonna happen again in these next 10 years, right? It doesn't need to though, right? It just needs to increase more than 4x and hold that price for the next decade. So the big question is, can Bitcoin do that? I say absolutely, and here's 4 big reasons why. First, Bitcoin's price follows these 4-year cycles that are separated by a halving event, where the amount of Bitcoin released every block is cut in half. We can't exactly explain or prove the relationship between halvings and the growing price of Bitcoin, but it definitely seems like there's something there, since Bitcoin's price has followed its scarcity in lockstep for its entire existence so far. Which means that if nothing changes in the next decade, we'll have 2 more full cycles that will bring Bitcoin's price to well over $1 million. That's conservatively a 20x gain. Now, if you want to go even more bullish, there's a theory called supercycle, which predicts Bitcoin will reach $1 million within the next year, with few corrections in between. I made a video about that, which you can check out up here or in the description below after you finish this one. The second point is that Bitcoin's growth is off the charts. It's growing faster than the internet did in its early days. Just look at this chart with both growth curves superimposed. Bitcoin is set to hit 1 billion users in just the next 4 years, way sooner than the internet did. And it's not just that. Look here at the number of verified users on Coinbase. That's skyrocketing too, with no signs of slowing. And the daily trading volume is picking up steam as well. I can show you charts all day long, but you get the point, right? Bitcoin is growing fast, and with huge adoption comes huge price increases. Third, Bitcoin is literally eating gold. We've seen funds and big name investors say that they've trimmed their gold position in favor of Bitcoin. So this idea is not just a meme anymore. There's real hard data that shows that Bitcoin is eating into money that would have otherwise flown into gold. This makes sense after all, since they're both hard assets and stores of value. That's why people call Bitcoin digital gold. Now, gold has about a $10 trillion market cap, and if Bitcoin reaches that same level, which is pretty likely in the next 10 years, that would amount to an 8.7x gain, which is way more than that 4x benchmark that we set for the S&P. And number 4, my biggest reason of them all is that institutions are here and they love Bitcoin too. We have Fortune 500 companies put Bitcoin on their balance sheet. We have Wall Street rushing to offer Bitcoin services to their clients. We have iconic investors like Paul Tudor Jones and Ray Dalio buy some Bitcoin. So the institutions are finally here, and while we see the early adopters now, it's only a matter of time until the rest of them get on the same page too. Cathie Wood and her ARK Invest team did an analysis that if all S&P 500 companies put just 10% of their cash into Bitcoin, that would raise the price by $400,000, which is a 10x increase from current levels. Are you convinced yet though? I think Bitcoin is gonna do 4x gains in its sleep, and Peter Mallouk, you might as well just pony up that $1 million right now. But wait up, there are some black swan events that could wreck Bitcoin and make Mark lose his bet. Like if there's a huge bear market that happens right before the bet expires and he loses due to bad timing. Or if quantum computers take over and everyone's Bitcoin wallets are hacked. Or if governments say no more and decide to ban Bitcoin once and for all. Or if Doge ends up beating out Bitcoin and Ether to become the Dogecoin standard. Anyways, do you agree with my analysis of why Mark will win his bet? Let me know down in the comments below. Also, if you're curious about supercycle theory, you gotta watch my video here. Also, don't miss this video about Mark Cuban's secret DeFi coins that I break down for you there. Hope you enjoyed this one. I'm Kevin from BFB, and I'll catch you next time.